Okay, good morning, everybody, and thanks for attending. My name's David Richmond. I'm the chair of the Government Affairs Committee meeting. I think it'll be great if we just go around and introduce ourselves once we go through. We have an agenda today. I believe this is probably the 20th time I've been involved in the first Selectmen candidate, let's just call it Q&A session. It's something that we've enjoyed throughout the years, just getting to know the candidates a little bit better and really focusing on, you know, the business side of the community, not just the resident side of the community. So what we're gonna do is, we do have some prepared questions that we had emailed you guys, and then I believe we'll do some questions from the audience, except for Sean's parents.
That's fair.
And you guys, your parents were, if I recall, you guys were very involved over the years in town government. Always. Finance committee?
Yep.
See, that's right here.
I was on the economic development.
Economic development, what were you?
Zoning.
Zoning. So you're the reason.
No, she just ran everything from the
That was
background.
great. So, I mean, it's nice to see that, you know, the family tradition continues. So what I'll do is I'll start, try to turn your phones. My wife's phone rang right in the middle of a wedding last week, and she's never on her phone. It was like, oh my goodness. All right. So, I'll just have, Morgan, why don't you introduce yourself and we'll just get throughout the room.
Sure. I'm Morgan Hilliard. I'm the executive director for the Simsbury Chamber, and I've only been here for a little over a year now. I started when COVID happened. I think it was the day after. And I've really just loved it. I've loved to get to know the community a little bit better. I already had some familiarity, but obviously it's been amazing to get to know all the businesses. We've been hosting a lot of community events, and it was great to have both Sean and Wendy involved in this past Sunday's community event for this spectacular celebration. And I'm excited to have this conversation and just get to know both of you in more depth, but just we've got so many new members that have recently relocated to Simsbury. So they don't have the history that David has locked up in his vault there. And they are gonna wanna know more about you on a personal level and what you're passionate about. So I'm excited for this opportunity for those members of the community to get to know you better.
Great. Excellent.
Cool. So my name's David Richmond. I've been in town since 1989. Raised our family here of 3 kids. Moved away for a few years, came back. I have 2 companies. One is real estate development. We own a building right across the street, Landmark Partners building. We're renovating a 3-family in Terriffill at the moment, and we are in the process of building a new self-storage facility at 34 Hot Meadow, which is right next to Curaleaf, which was approved by zoning 6-0, which is really something to be proud of. The other thing I do is I sell businesses, which is a very unique kind of company. It's difficult because we have to keep everything very quiet and confidential. Some of my recent transactions were Kane's Market, the bicycle seller, Peaberry's, to name a few. And that's a really good type of industry for me because I understand business, and it allows me to also help the local people, which is something that I'm very interested in doing at this stage of my life. So, and I'm the chair of Government Affairs Committee, and by the looks of these chairs, I'll be making a few calls to our committee, saying, where are you people? Right here.
Peter Askham. I retired about 5.5 years ago. I was an accountant, and I was a member of the chamber for many years. So I retired from both my government work and also from my business work. I was a CPA, and we've been in town since the early 80s. Moved in, raised our family, and proud to say our oldest is running for Board of Selectmen.
I'm Patty Askham. I basically grew up here, graduated from Simsbury High School. Served on zoning for 14 years. Raised our family here. Been involved in a lot of different things, PTOs, our program. We're very proud of them.
I'm Nick Mason. I've been a member of the chamber for many years. My wife was the president a number of years ago. She and I moved to Simsbury in 1985, I think it was. So I've been here 30-odd years. Been members of a number of nonprofits. Treasurer of Flower Bridge. Been on the board of Simsbury Community TV, which is changing its name to Simsbury Community Media very soon. I think that's who's filming back here. But I've been involved with that organization for since I think about 2001 or so, sometime around then. And I've always had a very interesting interest in Simsbury as a community, and part of our reason for, the Government Affairs Committee is to help promote business here in Simsbury.
Go ahead, Steve.
Me?
Yeah.
Steve Mitchell,
Steve,
born
we
and
only got
raised
an
in
hour.
Simsbury. My brother and I now are carrying on the Mitchell family tradition, which will be 100 years as an auto dealer in Simsbury, and I know. So third generation, and a strong business community in Simsbury, an active chamber. I'm very proud that this town is really growing, I think, responsibly. I want to see it grow responsibly. We got to finish the Greenway from Simsbury to Hartford. And as a former president of the Tourism Bureau, I think that the economic conditions of tourism and attracting young people and attracting young families to town is just a really positive thing to do.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm Jackie Battis. I am a lifelong resident, also born and raised here, and graduated from Simsbury High. I'm on the Board of Selectmen, and I'm here to keep those two in line.
Good morning, I'm Sandy Hart. I am an employee of the Simsbury Inn, Classic Hotels of Connecticut, for about 31 years now. So I've been around for quite a while, not a resident, but certainly very involved with Simsbury and the Chamber. Thank you.
And on our board.
My name is Marty Rookblatt. We've been in Simsbury since '79. I do consulting work now with nonprofits. I've been in the nonprofit sector nearly my entire life, and I've worked with the Chamber in the past on strategic planning and a few other teeny tiny projects.
Beth Rookblatt, thanks to Tim, lifetime teacher, now home, and interested in education things and policy.
I'm Lori Fernand. I've been in Simsbury since 2005. Both my children graduated from Simsbury schools. I serve on the Board of Assessment Appeals. I'm chair of the Simsbury Democratic Town Committee and a principal assistant to the Attorney General. So excited to be here.
I'm Mike Long. I've been in town since '69. Been with Ensign Victory a good part of that time. And I am very interested in seeing how this town develops over time. It's a great town. It's been great to raise my children in. And I'm interested to see what the proposals are for the future.
Cool. So what I think we do is just each of you introduce yourselves, just about maybe about your background, how you ended up here, and then we'll get right into the Q&A. And obviously we'll take questions from everybody that's here. Plus there were some that were previously emailed to both of you that the emailed questions, if you have them, just read them before you answer.
Okay.
That'd be great. And if you have any questions of us, let's just keep this a really open dialogue as we move forward. So let's start with Wendy.
Okay, taking my mask off. Leslie, I hope you can hear me. If we're not on mute anymore.
No, you're good.
Okay, I didn't want to. Okay, so I'm Wendy Max Dudas. I've lived in Simsbury for 34 years. Moved here in '87 with my husband. Well, we weren't married at the time. We did not expect to live in Simsbury. People said we could not afford to live in Simsbury, but we saw a house that we loved and we bought it. My background is I'm a lifelong Connecticut resident. I went to Bloomfield High School, class of in the 70s. What I knew of Simsbury from back then was the Deuce, the In Place, and the Simsbury Beer Fest. I'm sure I would think your mother might remember those things. I was never political. I did run for office in high school, and I ran for vice president of my junior class, and I beat the popular cheerleader that year. I was the underdog, so that's my history of running for office. I have a long career in information technology. I started at the Travelers and was a programmer in the very beginning of the days, not punch cards, but CRTs. That's where I met my husband, who I've been married to since 1988. We started out there together. I worked there until my second child was born, all in technology. And when first I have a son, Kevin, who's class of 2008, Simsbury High School. I have a daughter, class of 2011, Simsbury High School, both on to successful college and careers and had great experience. When Leo was born, Travelers offered a package to leave because it was during the Primerica merger. So I took it and I became a stay-at-home mom for 11 years in town. During that time, I was a little restless, so I started my own home business called Max Inc. I'm sure you all remember that. It was desktop publishing. And I also worked for some local small businesses, Pinnacle Network, which was Rich Boudreau, may he rest in peace, he just passed away. I worked for Bob Neighbors for Simsbury Antiques in his eBay business for quite a few years. Sue Glassbeagle did some work to find consulting gigs for women in the Valley, and she found me a couple programming gigs, and this was all during my time as a stay-at-home mom. Then I decided it was time to go back to work full-time because I had to put children through college, and I went back to, I started a job at United Healthcare in 2004 as a programmer again, and worked my way back up there to an IT director, where I managed teams from California to Minnesota and India, doing a major data conversion project there, which I did love doing. But unfortunately, there was a lot of reorgs going on back then. Well, it's not really that long ago, in 2018, and they offered another package to 55 and older technology workers to leave that job. So I took the package and was going to finish painting and doing work around our house during that time, but I saw a job offer for a part-time IT director for another small business out of Farmington, and right now I'm their IT director. We do medical training, and we've been hard hit by the pandemic because we could not have our in-class training. So we had to be agile and scramble, and as the IT director, we moved to virtual courses, and I also implemented a vaccine requirement program for our live courses, which we started up this year. During my time as a stay-at-home mom, that's where my Simsbury volunteerism really took place, because on both ends of that, I was a full-time working commuter in town. I was on the Simsbury, when my son started hockey at age 6, I was recruited to be on the Simsbury Youth Hockey Board, and I served on that board as the registrar for about 6 years. So I knew every kid in town, and I called most of the parents by the children's name. And I was also a director of one of the groups, the Pee Wee program. So I served there. My children went to both Tooten Hills and Terriffill School. We moved from one side of town to the other. So I started at Tooten as a PTO parent, a room parent, and then went to Terriffill and was much more involved because there weren't as many stay-at-home parents in the Terriffill district. So I really stepped up my game there to be involved because I was home for most of my kids' terms there. Ran the phenomenal raffle there. And during that time, I was also on the Cultural Enrichment Committee in town. I was in the 9-holer golf league when my children were little and played at the farms. And I've been in a book club for 26 years with the same Simsbury moms, some of them grandmothers, some of them passed away, some of them moved. During my children's time in Simsbury, I was a yay rah rah baseball parent, hockey parent, a little crew. My daughter did not stick with sports. We've tried them all, but both kids were very active in the performing arts. And so we went to many concerts and heard many of the same songs over the last, those times in my times there. So I think that's my career. Why did I run for office in 2019? I was not political, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I had no political inclinations over my year as a professional and as a stay-at-home mom. But in 2015, I saw what was happening, and I was not happy with the direction that the country was going in, and I became fairly obsessed with what was going on at the national level. And what I decided to do was get involved at the local level. I saw volunteering for Chris Murphy and Mary Glassman was something that I could do. And that really showed me the power of the people at this level of what we could do for others. So that inspired me to get involved. And when the DTC had a open house at Antonio's looking for people to volunteer, I went there to try to be on the ethics committee because I felt like I'm very focused on ethics. Someone suggested, why don't you run for the Board of Selectmen? We have an opening. Are you afraid to run for office? And I said no. I had a long history in town. I know a lot of people that respect me, and I ran for office and won as a newbie. So I've been on the board for 2 years, and I've really enjoyed being on the board, and I love the group that we have. It's been a little sad that our term has been through COVID, and I didn't really get to know Jackie till the last few months. We've all been on Zoom all this time, so it was kind of a hard time to be a leader, but I do think that we did a good job in supporting the town and town manager and the employees. One thing I would like to say is one of the other reasons I ran was because I was hearing about people moving out of town and leaving town. And I feel that for me, I always said, if I was gonna stay here, I wanna get a cup of coffee and go shopping downtown and have places to go to shop downtown. And that was kind of what I started out as how I would run and lead, is to develop our business area and make sure we had places to go and that we could keep and retain people in town. To add on to that, where I'm going now, what my vision for Simsbury is kind of a multi-pronged vision. We need, yes.
That's gonna be a question.
Okay, so you want me to stop there? Okay, I will stop there and that's it.
Okay, all right. Nicely done, Wendy. The slide this way so everybody can hear me. So, good morning, everybody. I'm Sean Askham. Nick, I'll work on you being proud of me as well.
Always.
I've been in town since, 1983, when I was, 2.5. My folks decided to make this the community that they were going to raise myself and then my brother and younger sister as well. Did move away for college briefly, started my career with the Travelers down in Virginia for a very brief period of time. Thankfully, as Wendy knows as well, Travelers likes to have everybody come back to Hartford to be part of the home office team, and being from Connecticut, I had an opportunity to come back here. So I've been with the Travelers for about 18 years now. And I'll get more to that in a second. But graduate of all Simsbury schools, Central, Henry James, and the high school. Was lucky enough to be able to be part of the crew team for 3 years. Thankfully, I finally found a sport that lined up with my lack of coordination and athletic abilities, and that I could just sit there and go back and forth over and over again, and it seemed to work. It also kept me quiet and focused, which was always a challenge when I was little. But I enjoyed that immensely and really helped shape who I am today. Being part of that team, which at the time I believe was 120 athletes. Phenomenal group of folks, phenomenal coaches, really, really amazing culture, and I think a gem in a town like ours. Not many public schools in the country have the opportunity to have a rowing program, and I think it turns out some pretty amazing individuals and athletes overall. Helped me get into college, pursued a business degree down at Washington College on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. Actually, one of the few schools that Washington actually lent his name to. And the oldest school in our new nation. Was very lucky to attend there. Was a 4-year varsity athlete, captain of the team my senior year, and senior class vice president as well. So my first election was at that time down in Maryland there. After school, as I said, I got a job with the Travelers. Had an opportunity to work for the Hartford here in town. Had an opportunity to work for the Travelers. And I'll admit now that I didn't entirely know what an underwriter was, but the Hartford wanted me to work for an underwriter and the Travelers wanted me to be one. So that sounded like a good deal. So hence I went the Travelers path. Given all the changes of life and everything else, I think I made the right choice. But again, still with Travelers today. Today, I'm in the bond and specialty division, which is one of the 3 prongs of Travelers. So we've got personal business and bond and specialty. There's 6 business units underneath. I manage a group of about 60 underwriters in a central underwriting facility that are actually remote from myself out in St. Paul. Helped bring that group from a very small group to a substantial portion of what we do today for business. I also run our strategic inventory of projects. What does that mean? That means anything that we're doing moving forward, I'm part of, or my team staffs, to make sure that we're prepared for the next 20 years of business. Uniquely prepared me both for town government, and town government has uniquely prepared me for that. A lot of similarities. So I referenced the remote working. As Wendy mentioned, we've been remote for almost 2 years now, something I've been used to for the last 10, managing employees going back and forth between St. Paul. Really helped me get to know people on a different level, make a more personal connection with that limited time I have with folks. Work on phone skills, work on email skills in terms of getting things done through others, and certainly transfer that to my experience here. As you heard during the warm-up, the introduction, my parents have always been involved in town. Mom is always very humble about it, but she saw a problem with the fact that they cut the DARE program when I was in elementary school. And through a partnership with the Instant Bickford Foundation, and I believe this gentleman over here, which is how Mike Long entered my life, they were able to raise, I believe, over $100,000 to put DARE back into the public schools, which obviously is immensely important to helping kids stay on a substance-free path. Really, I always remember that as I was able to be part of the community in a different way at a young age. Meeting with the youth officer, Rennie Hansen, who's always been a family friend, and other folks, just became part of my life to be part of government, to work with folks in the community that made a difference. And to me, it's never been political. It's been, this is how my family volunteers. This is how my family gives back. So when I came back to Connecticut after a brief time in Virginia, the first thing I did was look for ways to get involved. I obviously joined the Republican Town Committee because I have a fairly large number of opinions and I like to share them. They made me chair not too soon afterwards. I also was president of Farmington Valley Rowing Association, so I was able to stay connected to the rowing community and was able to be part of that for a number of years. Between the two, the opportunity presented itself years ago because as Wendy reflected, finding candidates are hard. Finding folks to raise their hand and put their name on the ballot is not always the easiest thing because you have to put yourself out there. You have to be vulnerable. You have to admit that you make mistakes or don't always do what people want, but you've got to do what's right for the position you're moving into. So I raised my hand and I was able to secure a spot on the ballot for the Board of Selectmen. You all think back to 2011 when one of the worst natural disasters we've had in this town hit. Everything kind of went sideways for a couple weeks, and by the grace of the storm and the voters of Simsbury, I ended up as the 6th individual and snuck on the Board of Selectmen that year. Here I am 10 years later now as the 10-year tenured member of the board, the current deputy first selectman. I think I've worked really hard over the years to do exactly what I think most people in this community want, which is there's a lot of things, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of stuff going on at the national level, there's a lot of stuff going on at the state level. And we all love to get charged up and read the New York Times or the Hartford Courant and get into that and get frothed up and argue with our neighbors and family members about who's more right about this or that. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really belong on the Board of Selectmen, in my opinion. We pave roads, we hire police officers, we cut grass, we fund public works, we work with the chamber, we work with Main Street. We do the stuff that we all take for granted on a daily basis. We build trails, and that's kind of the stuff we take for granted. But I often say to folks on the trail, we probably have more impact on your daily life than any of these people that we read about in the newspaper or think about or idolize or despise or all the other things. And it's not to say that our role is immensely important. I get that we're a very small piece of the pie. But what we do here, again, matters to your daily life, our daily life, my daily life. My daughters are 6 and 16 months. Audrey and Eleanor, they are my pride and joy. They are what makes me happy, why I keep charged up, keep getting excited, and why I'm continuing to be energized on this board as I see an opportunity to leave this community for them the way it was left to me, in a really good spot, but still work to be done. And I hope that we instill volunteerism in them, my wife and I, and my family, and excite them to continue to give back to the community that's helped raise me and been part of who I am. So that's my introduction, Dave.
Do we have, so people emailed questions. Do we want to start there, or do we want to start with this group?
I would start with the topic of, what is your campaign based around? What are your goals for the future if you were to win this position?
And I'm gonna do like timekeeper,
Okay.
and I'll just go like this.
So we're not using your questions.
No, you can use the questions, obviously, but as Morgan stated, why you want to run for first selectman, and why? Why now?
Well, I'll tell you why now. I had the opportunity to run, and I had the support to run, so I'm running. I feel strongly that our community can grow business-wise and resident-wise and diversity-wise. We have a lot of assets in town. We have our parks and rec, we have our trails, we have our local businesses, we have our schools, we have our police department, and I'm kind of looking at it as a multi-prong, working together effect to do the good for all the pieces together. So each, having a strong education, Board of Ed, which I was on the technology task force and helped approve the Latimer, which we voted for, will bring more people to town. These more people will support our local businesses. Or these people will use our trails and support our tourism. Friends will come to town. People will come to shop in Simsbury. I see us growing as more of a hub. We have a beautiful downtown area. We have multiple little villages that can also grow and expand a bit to entice people to those villages. I just think that visually we need to be cognizant of the people that are moving here. We're getting young families here. We're getting diverse families here. We have people that are 60 and older that want to stay here, and that's becoming an issue. I'm hearing that from many people. They want to stay here, but there's really nowhere to stay. So putting all those things together and making them work together is really kind of what I plan to focus on.
Excellent. Sean?
Yeah, what's inspired me to run for first is I've always wanted to do this, and there's not many kids that probably grow up and want to be first selectman. Wasn't ever able to do it, and then we changed our form of government, and it became possible because the reality of leaving a really strong career in the private sector wasn't going to allow me to achieve first selectman. But now that it is basically a volunteer position with a stipend and more of the chairperson of the board, it's really presented the opportunity to do so. I think, as Wendy articulates, she's right. We're at another crossroads in our community, and I think that's important. And what I'm excited about and what I think I bring to the table is a blend between where we've been and where we're going. Despite my only 40 years, I do have the 10 years of experience on the board. I have worked with every board and commission. I have worked with all three parties we've had in town, because we did have another party besides the unaffiliates previously. And I've worked hard to try to make sure that we're doing what's right for the community, not what I think is a Republican or as an individual in town, but what makes sense for this town. It's not always popular when we do that, but I think I do bring that to the table. As we're moving forward, the balance between quality of life, and I'll articulate what quality of life means in a second, and our education, I think is really critical. I think our residents, as Wendy's getting to, are demanding more than just great schools. And I think it's always been there, but I think it's become more vocal, and that folks want that work-life balance. They want that family life balance. They want more than just a national ranking. And I think that's an important evolution here. We lean on our homeowners and our businesses pretty heavily with a single focused mill rate, right? There's no other way for us to gain revenue in this town. And if we don't support businesses and we don't make it affordable, it's particularly challenging. But we've also got residents that demand a high quality delivery of services, and that costs money. So figuring out and maintaining that balance is, I think, a big piece of what I bring to the table from an experience standpoint, and that we can just make it cheaper, but that doesn't mean we gave you a better product. That doesn't mean you wanted to stay here or we've addressed the needs. We've got to continue to invest in things like what we just purchased with Meadowwood, investing in Simsbury Farms as we have, investing in our schools, investing in Latimer, but also as we crafted a solution this last year, how do we work with the Board of Finance to prioritize that capital? I take it very seriously, as my fellow board members know, about how we ask for capital. What do we ask for? Are we adhering to our policies? And how are we going to spend those taxpayer dollars, not just this year, but in the next 10 years, or in Latimer's case, 20 years? And I think that balance and that experience is what I bring to the table from that standpoint.
I have another question. Might as well give the
I was just
hard-
gonna, oh, I just
hard
want,
balls out.
oh, the heart, is that okay?
Okay.
I just wanted to add a couple things. I respect Sean's experience. I would say that as a newcomer here, who's lived here for 34 years, I can bring some creativity and vision to the table that may, allow me to see things that people that have been in office for a long time may not see. And that the other thing that I hope to bring to the table, because I will have more time given my career and family, to be more involved with CCM and CROG and COST, and to lean on our regional partners that are doing a lot of the same things that we're doing, and to find best practices with how they're operating in their municipalities, and bring some of that back here and share what we're doing here with them.
Stuck with Sean.
Okay.
Do you think going to a town manager form of government was the right decision for this town?
I do.
Considering your experience now with the town manager
I do.
position.
And I can articulate why. I think this town, struggled with that question for 30 plus years. Number of charter revisions, number of folks in the room have been on those charter revision commissions. Mr. Long, I believe, was on the last one and helped put forward that decision. I think it was time. I think we've had a phenomenal run of really strong, thoughtful professionals that gave their time. Peggy Shanks, Ted Tanzi, Mary Glassman, Tom Vincent, Lisa Hebner. All along the way, I think we've been very blessed. But I think some of it had to do with luck, and that the reality of economic times, the changing family dynamics with folks, both parents working at home, or both folks working, I think has shrunk our volunteer pool, has shrunk our talent pool from a running for office standpoint. And I believed strongly that setting Simsbury up for success for the next 350 years was going to be moving to that professional management. It doesn't come without changes. It doesn't come without pain points. I'm aware of a lot of them. I'm sure some folks will bring some up today. But what I've seen from an efficiency standpoint, from a professionalism standpoint, from a process standpoint, from a saving money, from a getting rid of some of the nonsensical things that I've seen over the years. And again, no fault to any first select person in the past, but each folk comes with their own unique skill set and their own talent. And because we run this place very lean and mean, that means other things don't get done. And again, no criticism of folks. But the town manager really provides that chief administrative officer function, is the way I look at it. And it's a bit different from an executive officer. She does cross into that role when we empower her to do so as a legislative body. But from an administrative function, I'll give you an example. We just hired a town clerk in 4 weeks. People barely knew that there was a vacancy, yet we were able to replace that role in about 4 weeks. I'll be honest with you, that would have taken us 6 months in the prior form of government, if not longer. And again, no criticism of prior leaders, but an example where process has certainly improved, I think, outcomes in the community so that we can focus on what we need to do, which is spending tax dollars wisely, delivering high quality services, and providing what residents expect. Union negotiations. We have an individual that specializes in union negotiations in that role now. And again, prior folks had done a good job with it, but there's been a significant improvement in consistency of contract execution, communication, expectation. I've always learned in the government side, you want consistent, repeatable expected outcomes. Surprises in government is not a good thing because it usually costs a lot of money. So the more we can plan, the more we can have certainty in budgeting and process and in people, the more efficient and effectively and consistently we can run this thing. So I think it's really been important to have a town manager, a chief administrator to do that. We're still working through the legislative side. We're still working through the town liaison side. A lot of folks enjoy walking in and communicating with the boss, knocking on the door, and having an audience. It has been a challenge in the past that there's views of favoritism by both parties in that role, and that there is political patronage perhaps that happened as a result of that. Certainly not in a town manager form of government. So, but again, that open door, that voice of the people has been, I think, a change for folks. I view our job, Wendy's and mine's, Jackie's, Chris, Eric, and Mike's, as the voice of the people. And I think that's part of the transition we're going through here is we need to provide ways for folks to get to us, to yell at us, to voice opinions to us. And we're the ones that decide as a group how to act and how to listen to those residents.
So I wasn't part of the government when we were in the other form of government. And my question on your question was, should we continue with a town manager and why? Right now, my answer is yes, because that's what the voters wanted back in 2016. I don't feel that it's been a full success, and I do think that there's improvements that are needed. I think what we need to do is, I feel there's a slight disconnect between the town manager and the elected officials and the public, and I think we need to tighten that up a bit. That's what I hear from people. I also hear from people they don't understand what the town manager does and what the Board of Selectmen does. So I believe there should be some clarifications to residents so they understand the roles. But I do think we need to hold the town manager to an acceptable standard set by the community and make sure that she's accessible to stakeholders, accessible to residents. We've talked about office hours and things like that. I do give Maria and the town a pass because my term has been through COVID, as has Jackie's, and it's been a hard environment to maneuver to know what's right and how to do that. But moving forward, I feel that access to residents and more working with the board would be in her favor, in our favor. One other thing that I would like to do, if elected, is to look at other towns that surround us. Again, I'm a resource-driven person because why recreate the wheel when the wheel's already been built? And we have towns that are around us that already have a town manager form of government with a board of selectmen or a town council. So are there things that they're doing that we're not doing and experiences that we can bring back to Simsbury to improve what we have today? And that's kind of where I would go with my answer on the town manager. It's still, right now, the answer is yes. It could change, and it would be from the voice of the residents.
To a follow-up, the town mask mandate.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Why was there not a coordinated effort between Granby, Avon, Canton, Farmington, and Simsbury to implement a townwide mask mandate where there was a lot of businesses in this town that suffered horribly because we are the only Farmington Valley town with a mask mandate, which if you ask the Farmington Valley Health District, call up the UConn Disease Management, call my daughter at UVM grad school for immunology and cellular molecular biology. I felt, a lot of people felt that it was real overreach by a town official, an employee of the town, where you guys are elected. Maria, as the town manager, is an employee. What gave our town manager the right to implement such a 180, a 360, 180, okay, you have to have it now. And it really, I watch people at the bank, they have to knock on the door and the banker comes out with a mask to put on to make your deposit. I think it's I believe it's gonna end soon, but it had no impact on the spread of COVID in this town. Or it didn't do anything except create another layer of bureaucracy, which is really, I can tell you, has made many people not pleased with that decision made by our town manager. And going forward, I believe, as a business owner and someone who employs people and has 14 tenants in their building, that should have been something that was really discussed with the Board of Selectmen. Talk to the business leaders, talk to Morgan as the head of the chamber, talk to Sarah Nielsen, Main Street, bring all the players in. Bring in Mike Long, who is probably still getting paid by Ensign Bickford somehow. But,
Is there a question here?
but really, that's a very hot matter right now that I'd like your answer to.
I'll be
please.
happy to jump in. I have a few things to say on that. First of all, I would give Maria some credence in issuing it. She was allowed to issue it by executive order.
Mhm.
And the board, Eric and Sean, felt that we should support her decision. She did navigate us through COVID for 18 months safely, and Simsbury had really good outcomes. So I looked at that we followed the right protocol to get through it, and a lot of us made it through alive, I should say. So that's the first thing I would like to add to that. The other issue that I have is don't love wearing a mask, but I don't mind putting a mask on to go into a store and buy a bottle of wine. And I understand the office scenario, but what I'd like to say is when we first implemented it, I did talk to Sarah Nielsen and Main Street and got feedback that a lot of the businesses were okay with the mask mandate because they could ask their employees to wear a mask, and it didn't come across as negative that they were forcing them to wear a mask. And it was all done in the protection of residents. But then, as time went on, we were hearing that people were losing business and profits for that. And that I was a little frustrated with that, in that if somebody who's shopped at Vincent's for 20 years for soccer equipment or hockey equipment is now not going to shop there because they have to walk in there with a mask, I find that a little bit disrespectful. And I'm sorry. You don't just, and we had supported our businesses, all of us, through the pandemic to make sure that they could succeed. And we're almost at the end of it. And now you're not going to shop there. So I do have a little bit of an axe to grind there. But I think that now we know that things are looking up and we're leaning towards, it's public knowledge, correct? So we're in yellow. We've been in yellow for 3 weeks, and we're looking at potentially removing the mandate. Maria is sometime in the near future if the things remain the same. So that's my feeling on it. I don't like it, but I'll do it because it's for the greater good, and that's my philosophy.
Yeah, Wendy and I are very much aligned on this, and I'll just go further in that it was always done in the idea of public safety. It was never done to hurt businesses. It was never done to cause frustration, political strife, all the symptoms that have come. The intent and Maria's and the board's priority was keeping folks safe and alive. Are we going to know if it ever worked or not? I'm not sure, because even if there's 50 studies, somebody's going to disagree with it. I don't know, right? But as I've told many folks along the way, everybody was okay with us trusting the Farmington Valley Health District and the CDC all through the pandemic. And then unfortunately, things changed and we had to go back to masks, and folks didn't want us to listen to the folks that we had just listened to for 18 months. And I, as a volunteer, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a specialist in this area. In fact, I'm not a specialist on almost anything I vote on. I rely on experts, I rely on data, I rely on staff to guide us. It doesn't mean I just blindly accept their proposals. I ask questions, I push back. I mean, Lord knows, we both push back on a lot of things. But at the end of the day, I have to make a decision on do I trust folks or do I not? And I recognize that folks want to die on the constitutional hill and they want to be frustrated in their right, and I get it. One of the unintended consequences is roughly 5%, 10% of folks are simply refusing to wear masks. And we're not out there enforcing it because our police department is understaffed, and it's not a reality to ask the officers to go police this on a regular basis. We certainly had no intention of hurting small businesses. We had no intention of frustrating residents and causing the owner of the grocery store across the street, Fitzgerald's, to have to get into an argument with a customer and nearly have to call the police as a result of that. That's not what anybody wanted. And it's unfortunate that I think our residents and our country has had enough with this darn pandemic. I certainly have. I hate mandates, Jackie. You know how much I hate mandates and government ordinances and other things. But you know what? I went against what I despise on a personal level because it was in the vein of making sure that people stayed alive and they were kept safe. And if I'm wrong, I was wrong because I tried to do the right thing. Not because I was trying to control people or not because I was trying to hurt somebody, but because we were trying to do the right thing. As Wendy absolutely said, the governor gave the town manager the executive authority to do so. So again, I'm not trying to pass the buck upstairs, but it's not Maria's fault that the governor issued an executive order. She did make a decision to implement it. She didn't have to. But the question of deriving power or where the authority come from or anything else, very clear. The governor issued it. The governor has that right to do so.
Don't you think that, you've got, again, Avon,
Well-
Granby,
Yep.
not doing anything, and here's Simsbury, and there was a lot of people very irritated by the fact that it was a mandate.
Yep.
And the thing is, if you go into any of the restaurants today,
Mhm.
no one has a mask on.
Not when they're sitting down.
Not when you're sitting, right.
No,
Once you get in
standing,
and, so,
not even sitting.
I do wanna-
There's no one wearing masks. And meanwhile, Brian DeVoe has to have someone in there arguing with him that they don't want to wear a mask.
Brian was one of the business owners that was relieved because
yeah, he was for it at
he
first.
was, he was
right?
for it at first. Yeah, it's
We
a
were all
challenging.
for it.
Right. It's been hard, but I'll tell you, but at CROG, right? I mean, we had assurances that other towns were going to go with us,
That's,
and
That's what I was
they
going
changed.
to add.
Yeah, they changed their mind at the last second. I don't know why.
so
I don't know if
that's
they-
not no. That's great that we did
It
not
was
know
intended
that.
to be a united front.
It was
was.
intended
And
to be
there were
one front.
those that fell off of that bandwagon last month.
Yep, they
Let's
absolutely
take some
did.
questions from the people that have braved the elements.
I'm only gonna weigh in on this one time, I guess for myself, because it seems like it's not a winnable discussion. I guess I want to applaud Simsbury for having done the mandate. We have family
Thank
all
you.
over the country.
Mhm.
We've had family that we haven't been able to see for almost 2 years and all that. We've elderly family that we take care of, little ones who can't get vaccinated. But I shop all over the valley. I walked in a number of places that were not Simsbury, where people know that I'm from Simsbury, and I get exactly the opposite thing. They, as business owners, said, why can't our town do what your town did? We will keep my employees safer. So I'm just gonna say from that standpoint, I heard good things. Of course, we hear bad things. People don't wanna wear masks. It's lovely to breathe without it. But I did hear the other from other businesses who wish that they had leadership who had the guts to actually go, this is probably for the health and safety of everybody. Let's just weigh this out until the numbers get better. And fortunately, they are getting better.
Yep.
I can't help but think that the masks help with that when you realize the number of cold, flu, and other things are down. So I just applaud you for that. I know it's painful. The whole thing is painful, but I'm hoping this helps us get through it.
I appreciate that. I ran my own study last year. My daughter was in kindergarten, all day in-person kindergarten, 16 kids in that class. Any of you that have had kids know, you come home with the pukes, the sniffles, the everything else that we don't want to talk about. You know what my daughter didn't bring home once in kindergarten? Any of that. And she had a mask on every day. I don't know if it was the mask. I don't know if people actually kept their kids home, but you know what? None of those lovely things from kindergarten came to my house last year. So, or my parents' house, yeah.
It will be
So,
interesting
I don't
to see what happens with the flu season.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm getting my
this year
shot.
compared to last year.
I agree. It's interesting. Yeah.
Nick, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm a little confused. It seems to me that the Board of Ed, when asked to take a look at potentially, they've lost, 1,000 kids over the last 15 years or so in the school system, to potentially close a school down, came back and effectively said, no, we need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars renovating almost every school in the system. That seems to me not where the Board of Selectmen is trying to go. From a leadership point of view, you guys are gonna have to deal with that. I'm not sure how you redirect them to think about what's the implications the mill rate will be of, a spending program if they implement something like that. And if the Board of Finance approves it, that's gonna be devastating on bringing businesses and bringing people who wanna live here.
To pay for the schools, you're saying to,
Just the impact of bonding millions and millions of dollars for renovations is gonna have a major impact on your capital program and eventually on the mill rate.
well, I would speak to I could speak to that, because I was on the Facilities Enrollment Task Force, which looked at all the options for the schools going forward. And the end result, and it was a conglomeration of people from all facets in town. The decision, the option that we went with was to make all the K through 6 schools, K through 5 schools, and move 6th grade to Henry James. That was the educational and optimal decision. Right now, the only thing on the capital plan is the Latimer School, which we approved at referendum. And the reason being because that is the most overcrowded, oldest school. It's not ADA compliant, and that's where the money's going right now. The other point of that is they're doing it as a renovate as new rather than a tear down and rebuild a new school somewhere, because we get more money from the state for that. So your question is, right now, I don't see those other things. We have a 6-year capital plan. Henry James renovation is not on there. None of the other schools renovations are on there. They may not be on there. So that's part one. The other part was there was a lot of outcry about closing one of the schools. And my issue with that, which I vocalized on the enrollment task force, was the problem that they started from the very beginning was saying it was going to be Terriffill School. Had they just placed any school will close here, it would have changed the discussion, and they wouldn't have gotten in the corner where they said we're not closing Terriffill School or we're not closing any school. I do think prematurely to have made a promise that we're not closing any school, well, it was a premature promise because you don't know 10 years from now where we're going to be and what we're going to be able to afford. And for them to have, again, not to my Board of Ed partners, I think to promise now that we're never going to close a school, I don't know if that is a promise that can be held over the next 20 years. But again, not to target one school, because then everybody has skin in the game that a school is going to close. And it just very well be my school, Central School, your school. It might be Terriffill, it might be Latimer. So that's just how I feel about that. I understand the capital.
Can I just add on?
Yeah.
Before we go next one, sorry, Mike. Nick, I get where you're going with the capital plan. We've got to deal with the capital needs, with the maintenance needs of our schools. I think Wendy is right. There's nothing else that's on the capital plan right now, but Squadron is looming. Is it year 8? Is it year 10? Is it year 12? I don't know. We're gonna have to look at that, but we just put up a 20-year bond that we haven't even started paying for yet. So the numbers are not in our favor for continuing to invest in town assets and maintain the schools at the level folks expect and keep a steady mill rate right now. It's going to take some pretty substantial capital management over the next 10 years to do so, and the decisions she and I are making right now certainly impact that, as you know, as we're putting ourselves on the hook for future payments. The good news is I think we are doing some additional smart things, at least at the board level, and passing them on to the Board of Finance. And this is another plug for the town manager. And I believe you both were of this mindset, is paying cash. We've gotten away from paying cash. 7% was always a guideline, but it didn't mean we had to bond 7%. We could pay 3.5 cash and 3.5 bonds. And the town manager very much subscribes to a cash philosophy versus a debt philosophy, which I think is rare in an administrator, especially these days, is pass the buck to somebody else. So setting up additional capital funds, doing our year-end transfers like we just did, transferring $1 million to the capital reserve fund for what's coming down the pipe are ways that we can mitigate some of that. It's not going to solve all of it, but that proactive management, the changes that we made to the capital plan to quote unquote make Latimer fit this past year, not exactly decisions that everybody loves. The senior center came off for the time being. That certainly disrupts and upsets a number of folks in the community. But that's where it is at this point. It doesn't mean we can't revisit it and put it back on. But I view our role as really important as the glue between the two boards. Is Board of Finance certainly has to figure out how to pay for it, but we're the ones that have to prioritize it between the educational side and the town side, the immediate need, the long-term need. What do the police officers need? What do the business community, seniors, right? And that falls to us. So I think we do a pretty darn good job of it, and I think as long as we keep our steady hand that we have had, I think we're going to continue that. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I think, and I'd like, you both pay attention to it, perhaps more than has been in whatever your future roles are. And that is the attention to a maturing community that we have here. We have with the number of new apartments that have opened in the past 5 to 10 years, there are a lot of people who, and it's great, people who are maturing in Simsbury who now want to stay in Simsbury.
Right.
They don't have to leave to find housing that's appropriate because they can get into one of the apartments or over 55 housing, et cetera. However, with that comes some needs. And I think they're very much community-based and focused needs. You need to have, with a 55 and older population, health and safety services. I think, attention should be given to how do you provide those? An active and effective police department, ambulance service, adult activities. You need appropriate, I think, public safety facilities. You need a public safety and health, I believe, building for your police, ambulance, and social services to be together, working and serving that element of our population. You need to service the senior service center, providing necessary and targeted activities for that slice of our population. We have all kinds of things for kids in schools, et cetera, but that's growing part of our population base here in Simsbury needs to have that sort of attention also. And I think it's been missing from the dialogue, basically. And so I'd like to just emphasize that that'll be somewhere in the thinking.
It is. I just want to weigh in that a few people that I talked to recently, have pointed out as you get older and you're not driving anymore, the transportation through town. We do have dial-a-ride, but there's really that I think we're pretty limited to that, and that's something to consider. And I've had 3 people tell me that they would like to have ranch houses in Simsbury. So I'm just putting that out there on the radar.
You work on that, Jackie?
I know.
It's an interesting challenge because in again my unofficial observations, we talk about seniors like it's one need in this community, and it's, from my observation, absolutely not the same. We have a phenomenally active, intelligent, involved senior community that is very much trails, bird watching, recreation activities, exercising, marathons, 10Ks, books, events at the library, and that's a lot broad range of services to provide, and I think we have done a pretty darn good job of focusing on that. But Mike, I hear you too on the as folks age, there are additional needs and services as well, and there are challenges that come with it. One of the things we've just looked at, and a group of residents brought it up to us, is how are we staffing ambulances in town? Are we holding the ambulance folks to the changing community? And they've been piloting on a full-time basis a second ambulance from the 7 to 7 and the 7 to 5 shift. We've seen, I think, a 50% reduction in mutual aid calls. I know it sounds like I'm talking in code. What does that mean? That means when you call 911, the second ambulance comes faster. That means that instead of 18 minutes or 20 minutes, it might be 6 minutes or 7 minutes. That's pretty important because we do have a phenomenal response rate in this community. We're very lucky, as Mike knows from the police commission, our police officers are our very first responders. They're often there in under 5 minutes, able to stabilize the scene as best they can. But that transport time, that advanced life support, has taken a little bit longer from a second ambulance standpoint. So that's one of the things we're looking at. And Mike, not lost on me your words, we need to figure out how are we going to do a safety complex, right? We've got renovations in the future plan for our police department. But the reality is putting one of our most important assets in the basement of a building, not exactly accessible to the community, not exactly what we would expect from a community public safety standpoint. But moving them, acquiring a building, building something is very expensive. So we've got to figure out how do we strike that balance as well.
Question.
You're the boss.
There's a beautiful, beautiful building that's empty in Terriffill.
Yep.
The old church.
Yeah.
I actually had I toured that last week. I just I drive by it all the time. I wanted to go in. So here's a magnificent structure, empty. House next door, empty. Now, I know there's been some interest from outside real estate investors, but can the town at least create some type of ad hoc task force, maybe to look at that property and create something from it to benefit the town? See, that would be a beautiful place for a senior center without having building something from scratch. It's a renovation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a magnificent building that sits there. It doesn't collect any tax revenue because it's still a nonprofit, but should maybe the board of selectmen, first selectmen, start taking a look at those vacant properties in town and say, what's the best use for the community? And unfortunately, I don't know how long it's been vacant. You might know.
A few years.
A couple of years.
3-4 years.
5 years, yeah.
And again, it just sits there.
Mm-hmm.
So what, is that something that you guys, how do you feel about some of these vacant buildings that are not being used for anything, even housing for low-income folks or something.
Well, you can't feel good about it, obviously, right? Like, that's a huge property. There's a lot of parking there. I think some of the issues of what you put there, because it's so close to the school, could create issues. Would I love to see that filled? Yes. Would I like to see more at the mill, which is the most beautiful property, I think, in Simsbury? No offense to anybody here, but it's riverfront property, and I've heard that there's a lot of vacancies there with all that waterfront land. You know, what could we do there? I would think that that's really important. So I think a lot of that is important. And also, as we expand the bike trail through Bloomfield, through Terrafil, connecting from is going to put a lot of emphasis on Terrafil and what we can put in those places, and maybe it will attract more interest. But again, we have the zoning board, so we have some oversight on zoning because we are the policy and the purse to have some influence there. But it's just a basic question. Of course, I'd like to see something there.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting role that we play as the facilitator, Dave. I think is where I see us. And obviously, where there's no taxpayer dollars in the capital plan to fund something, but there is the power of connection. There is the power of influence. I think that our board, our town manager, our first select person can play to bring the parties together to get it done. But Wendy's right. You know, we have to figure out also how to pay to get the rest of that trail up there. Because if we don't connect the rest of the bike trail, you know, that $1 million that was invested on the Bloomfield connection is for naught. We have to prioritize Terrafil as well. We have not put enough, you know, dollars on a capital or an investment standpoint up there, and it's challenging. It's a pretty condensed piece of land up there. It's, you know, it's got some topography challenges, but we've got to do a better job. And yeah, getting a senior center, getting a town facility up there. Now I can say I would obviously want to talk to the chief and the police commission, but I don't think putting public safety up there is the right decision because it's too
9 miles to the other end.
it's too disconnected. We need more central. But again, that doesn't mean we shouldn't think creatively. You know, we try to get gas up there by converting the school and the fire station, and I believe that didn't work out from a gas company standpoint. You know, how do we invest? You know, perhaps Wendy and I have been trying to get ARPA dollars up there, but I'll tell you that the feds are not kind to us in terms of what we can do there.
I was going to say, Jackie, Sean, and I are on the ARPA work group, and we're just getting going on that because we're getting $7.5 million. The three of us are working together with Amy, our finance director. She's the holder of the purse as to what we can use the money for because we have to follow the guidance. But it's evolving, right? And that's why we're working slowly with it because it is changing. We just got some new things this week on it, and we're bringing in some people to tell us more of what we can do. But some cities are using it for tourism. The problem with our town is we don't know if we're going to get paid back. There's no process that you submit your project and it says, okay, we're going to pay you back. We have to spend it and then we're going to get paid back. And that's a risk to all of us. So we're learning more about it, and that would be why we're not moving as fast as some other towns are moving. But the three of us are really working on that together, and the three of us are working to make it in the best interest of town.
Yeah, a lot of communities have just spent on air conditioning, and if that's our only option at the end of the day, then we'll do that. But right now, I think we're trying to be far more creative than just changing the air in certain buildings.
Okay.
Well, it's 10:10.
Good discussion. Thank you.
One other last thing we would like to see.
Yes.
Going forward with the new, however things, you know. Thanks.
Bye, Mike.
You know, with the new board of selectmen is more of a relationship with the business owners. You know, in the past, the chamber would host a government affair, bring the whole board of selectmen together with the business owners. So you can really hear from us what we believe are some of the things that may need to be improved, things that are working well. A lot of times you don't hear the good things.
No.
It's always all this bad. But there are a lot of things that are working very well here. And I think if we start to focus on building that relationship, there are certain people on the Board of Selectmen that I don't know. And if I walk by them on the sidewalk, they wouldn't know me, which is disheartening as I've been in this town for over 30 years and I've invested a tremendous amount of capital in this town. So I think there needs to be greater outreach of the whole board, not just the first selectman. And like when I think I met you at the firemen's
With Dave Hart, yeah.
With Dave, you know, and I'd never known you, and then now we see each other, and I
At
think
ribbon
the whole
cuttings.
board needs to step up a little bit more and get more involved in the community, not just the first or the deputy.
Mhm.
And I think that's something we need to see changed going forward.
I think it should be a team effort, the Board of Selectmen. So that would just be what I envision.
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, you know, I've served under 3 different first selectmen at this point. You know, 2 very much managed and didn't delegate the opportunities, and I think in the old ways it would kind of revolve between the 6. So I think Wendy's right. We need to be more collaborative in that space. You know, the other challenge is, and not defending it, is all 5 or 6 of us have a full-time job too, just like you guys do.
I know.
And I think we need to. You're working hard. I mean, you have a lot going on.
I have a very light part-time job. I'm just going to put that out there.
So 5.5 full-time jobs, but there's a lot going on, and not making an excuse. But I think if we do a better job of representing and taking turns and all being at something, I think we can get to what you're talking about
Different
there.
hours, you know,
Yeah.
there's
I
something
think
called
the
after 6.
Chamber's Government Affairs Committee itself, I think, is that perfect point of contact between your group and the business owners, because it's that one committee that brings up these important topics,
Yep.
has a variety of speakers to bring topics of interest to our businesses.
So we should have a liaison to your government affairs,
Absolutely.
right? We don't now.
Correct.
That is one of the few things the first select person can do is appoint liaisons.
The selectmen have had one.
Oh,
It was the first select person in the past.
Well, it's-
Yes.
you know,
Okay.
It's varied, but
Yeah.
over a long period of time, there's usually been one of the selectmen at almost every one of our in-person meetings. I mean,
Correct.
granted, we haven't been doing this is the first time for me in, what, a year and a half or more, but that used to be one of the things that was always there.
well, that's a problem. Even all the liaisons
Yeah.
should be on, I went to a couple zoning planning and we didn't have a representative there, and maybe they were busy and that's an issue, but bringing back the information needs to come to the whole board. We've just realized that we need to know what's happening on every board and commission, whether someone's there on the, at the meeting or not.
Watching
We
the
need
meeting.
to hear.
Yep,
We
I
just
agree.
heard about the moratorium on marijuana. We're hearing about the ADU opt-out. We didn't know until I said, watched it on TV, and I heard about it and brought it back to the board, and then we got it relayed to us, and Mike was really good about filling us in. But stuff like that, we need people to communicate across the board.
I just want to thank both of you so much for being here today. It was really wonderful to get to know both of you on a more in-depth level and your history and where you're passionate. And just really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And we'll be posting this on the Chamber website so that all of our members are able to get to know you on the level that we have.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Yeah,
much,
thank
Morgan,
you guys.
Leslie,
Yeah.
Dave.
Thank you guys for doing
Nick.
this. We don't get a lot of opportunities. Thank you.
Nice job there.
Nice job.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.